Billionaire sacked poor Maid after advising him not to marry Fiancé. 5 years later. This happened. Hello family, welcome back. Please do well to subscribe and let's know where you are watching. The story from in the comment section. Ethan Cole was the kind of man people whispered about in boardrooms and fancy parties. Young, sharp, and ruthless, he'd built a business empire by age 30. People called him the Cold King, and the nickname fit. Nothing seemed to touch him, not the ups and downs of the market, not the praise or criticism of the media, and certainly not the feelings of those beneath. His notice. Tonight, his mansion buzzed with excitement. Dozens of staff hurried up and down the marble halls, hanging white orchids and arranging silver plates for the engagement party. The media would be outside, cameras ready to catch a glimpse of Ethan and his fiancée, Amelia Brooks, a woman the city adored almost as much as it envied. But down in the servants' quarters, Clara Miller watched the preparations with tired eyes. She had been working since dawn, polishing floors, folding napkins, and hauling boxes too heavy. For her slim frame, at 26, Clara was used to hard work. Her mother's medicine wasn't. Cheap and good jobs were rare. But here, in this glittering house, Clara felt invisible. Staff barely spoke to each other. They feared Ethan's icy stares and Amelia's sudden temper. As she polished the grand staircase, Clara glanced up at a large painting, Ethan's parents on their wedding day. They looked happy, the kind of happy that seemed impossible in this house. A voice startled her. "You missed a spot." Clara looked up, heart thudding. Amelia stood on the landing, dressed in an expensive silk robe, her hair in perfect waves. Even in slippers, Amelia looked like someone born for spotlights. "I'm sorry, ma'am," Clara said, wiping the smudge quickly. Amelia didn't respond, just kept walking, her perfume lingering like a warning. The party started at 7. By then, Clara was almost too tired to stand. She ducked out to the garden to get some air, hiding behind a hedge. She watched the guests arrive, politicians, actors, business rivals. Everyone smiled and laughed as if they belonged in a magazine. She almost missed what happened next. Near the back gate, Clara saw Amelia slip away, glancing over her shoulder. A black car pulled up, and out stepped Daniel Grant, Ethan's rival, the man he'd once called a snake in a suit. Clara pressed herself closer to the hedge, her breath caught in her chest. Amelia rushed to Daniel. He touched her face gently, his thumb brushing her cheek. They whispered, too soft for Clara to hear. Then Amelia laughed. A real laugh, not the fake one she used at parties. Daniel leaned in and kissed her, quick but intimate. Clara felt sick. She waited until the car drove away and Amelia disappeared inside. For a long moment, Clara stood frozen. She knew what she saw. She knew what it meant. But what was she supposed to do? This was Ethan Cole's world. People like Clara didn't get involved. But Clara thought of her mother, who always said, "It's better to lose everything than lose your soul." She took a shaky breath and went inside. The party was in full swing. Music, laughter, the clink of crystal glasses. Clara slipped through the kitchen, her heart pounding. She saw Ethan in the study, alone for a moment, checking his phone. She knocked softly. "Sir." Ethan looked up, frowning. "What is it?" Clara took a deep breath. "I'm sorry to disturb you, sir, but I need to tell you something important." He stared at her, his eyes cold and impatient. "This isn't the time. It's about Miss Brooks," Clara said quietly. Ethan put his phone down. "What about her?" Clara hesitated, her hands shaking. I saw her outside just now. She was meeting Daniel Grant." Ethan's jaw clenched. "Daniel Grant?" "Yes, sir. They were very close. I saw them together. It didn't look right." Ethan stood up, his expression hardening. "Are you accusing my fiancé of something?" "No, sir. I just thought you should know. I wouldn't say anything if I wasn't sure. I'm only trying to help." He cut her off, voice sharp. "Help? By spreading lies? By making up stories about my future. Wife, do you know how serious an accusation that is? Clara's face burned. I'm not lying, sir. I swear. I thought. He stepped closer, towering over her. You thought you could poison my mind on the night of my engagement? You're nothing but a maid. How dare you judge her? Is this jealousy? Do you think you deserve a better life by stirring trouble? Tears pricked Clara's eyes. No, sir. I'm only telling the truth. Ethan's voice was ice. I don't tolerate liars in my house. You're fired. Get out now. And if I ever see you here again, I'll have security remove you. The words hit like a slap. Clara's mouth opened, but nothing came out. She looked at Ethan, searching for any sign of doubt, any flicker of the boy he might have been before money turned his heart to stone. She found nothing. She nodded, swallowing her tears. Yes, sir. She turned and walked out, back stiff, past the kitchen staff who watched with wide eyes but said nothing. Clara's hands shook as she packed her few belongings. No one stopped her. Outside, the night was cold. She pulled her thin coat tighter, the sound of laughter from inside ringing in her ears. The next morning, Ethan sipped black coffee and read the headlines. Power couple of the year, Ethan Cole and Amelia Brooks. He felt a pang. Clara's words lingered in his mind. Unwelcome. For a moment, he almost wished he'd asked more questions. But then he remembered Amelia's smile, her warm touch. Clara was wrong. She had to be. He walked into the kitchen. The staff worked silently, eyes down. Ethan paused. Where's Clara? She left last night, sir. The head housekeeper said quietly. You let her go. Ethan nodded, pretending he'd forgotten. Good. She was trouble. But as the days passed, Ethan noticed something strange. Amelia was distracted. She took more phone calls in private. Sometimes he caught her watching him with a look he couldn't read. The staff whispered less. The house felt colder somehow. Clara wandered the city, clutching her small bag. She had nowhere to go. The money she'd saved was barely enough for a week. She thought of her mother, alone in their tiny apartment. What would she do now? Clara's chest tightened, but she walked on. She found work at a rundown cafe, washing dishes for half the pay and none of the respect. But every night, before she slept, she told herself she had done the right thing. She remembered her mother's words, never be afraid to speak the truth, no matter the cost. Back at the mansion, the engagement party buzz faded. Guests moved on. The city forgot. Only Ethan and Amelia remained, trapped in the perfect cage he'd built. Ethan's heart grew harder, the warning echoing in his mind, a warning he chose to ignore. Amelia, in her private moments, laughed quietly to herself. Daniel called her late at night, his voice smooth and cold. He'll never know, Daniel promised. He trusts you too much. Amelia smiled. He trusts the mask I wear, not me. Weeks passed. One night, Ethan found himself standing at the window looking out into the dark. He thought of Clara. The fear in her eyes, the honesty in her voice. For the first time, he wondered what she was doing now. Did she hate him? Did she wish he'd listened? He would never know. He told himself it didn't matter. But somewhere deep inside, the first tiny crack had formed in his confidence. Down in her tiny room, Clara wrote a letter to her mother. I lost my job, she wrote, but I didn't lose myself. She hoped that was enough. Outside, the city kept moving. Cars and people rushed by, unaware that two lives had changed. Forever, one by the cost of truth, the other by the price of pride. And so the story began. If you haven't subscribed yet, I'd love you to join our community by hitting the subscribe button. Through our stories, we build hope and give future to children and women abused all over the world. Also let us know in the comments where you are watching us from and how this story hit home for you. 6 months later, Ethan's mansion was once again buzzing, but this time it was for the wedding. The whole city watched as Ethan Cole and Amelia Brooks became husband and wife in a ceremony that spared no expense. Paparazzi camped outside. Social media flooded with perfect pictures. Everyone admired the glowing bride and the proud, stoic groom. But inside the mansion, things felt different. Empty, almost hollow. The same staff moved, quietly, avoiding Ethan's eyes. Clara was gone, just a ghost in the memories of a few. In a cramped apartment across town, Clara stacked cups behind the counter of the cafe where she now worked. She scrubbed her hands until they ached, worried about her mother's growing hospital bills. Every now and then, a customer walked in talking about the wedding. The stories always sounded like fairy tales. Amelia Brooks is so lucky. Ethan Cole has everything. Clara tried to tune it out, focusing on the steady work. But sometimes, late at night, she'd lie awake, wondering if Ethan ever thought about her warning. Her mother's health was getting worse. On the nights when her mother's cough kept them both awake, Clara's heart squeezed tight. She'd sacrificed her job, her future, for the truth. Now it all felt like a bad dream. Meanwhile, Ethan's life seemed perfect on the outside. His friends envied him. His company's stock soared. His wife was beautiful, always shining on magazine covers, always ready with a dazzling smile. But after the party ended and the last guest left, Ethan and Amelia barely spoke. Amelia spent most of her time out: brunches, charity events, late-night meetings. When she was home, she brought tension with her. Sometimes, Ethan caught her whispering on the phone, her back turned, her voice sharp and urgent. Ethan tried to ignore it at first. He'd always been busy: business deals, meetings, interviews. But at night, when he rolled over and found Amelia's side of the bed cold, he felt a strange emptiness growing. Once he tried to ask her about her day. She just smiled, kissed him on the cheek, and disappeared into her dressing room. 3 months into the marriage, the cracks began to show. One afternoon, Amelia called for a meeting with the house staff. Her voice was cold, her face stiff. "Some of my jewelry is missing," she announced, holding up an empty velvet box. "I want it. Found. Now." The staff exchanged nervous glances. Ethan walked in, tired from a long day at work. He saw the way Amelia glared at the maid who'd cleaned her room. The girl stammered, shaking her head, swearing she hadn't seen anything. Amelia's voice was sharp. "You think I'm lying? Do you want to lose your job?" Ethan watched in silence, his jaw tight. He said nothing, not even when Amelia fired 2 maids. That afternoon, he just poured himself a drink and shut the door to his study. Later that night, he asked, "Are you sure you didn't just misplace it?" Amelia's eyes flashed. "You think I'd make something like this up? Your staff is lazy and careless. I want them all replaced." Ethan stared at her. She didn't back down. In the end, he gave in, just as he always did. A week later, Ethan found a diamond earring under the cushion of Amelia's car seat. He considered telling her, but stopped. Something about the way she'd handled things unsettled him. He kept the earring in his desk drawer and said nothing. Amelia grew colder. She left for meetings that lasted all night. Ethan noticed unfamiliar numbers on their phone bill, numbers that started showing up again and again. Sometimes, Amelia didn't come home until sunrise. When Ethan confronted her, she brushed him off. "Business. You wouldn't understand." He didn't push. He poured his energy into work. But mistakes started happening: bad investments, careless decisions. His board of directors noticed. Ethan's famous confidence began to crack. At a family dinner one evening, Amelia's brother asked her, "How's married life?" Amelia smiled. "Busy, but I have everything I want." Her eyes slid to Ethan. He forced a smile, feeling like he was being watched. That night he tried to talk to her. "Is something wrong?" She rolled her eyes. "You're imagining things. Maybe you should get some sleep." Meanwhile, Daniel Grant started appearing in the news again. His company was growing fast, landing deals that Ethan once dominated. Daniel made jokes about Ethan in interviews, calling him distracted. People started whispering that Ethan Cole had lost his edge. Ethan tried to ignore the rumors, but the doubts ate at him. Once he almost called Clara. He didn't have her number, and besides, what would he say? He'd fired her for telling the truth. He was too proud to admit he might have been wrong. In her apartment, Clara watched a news report on TV. Ethan and Amelia stood together at a gala, smiling for the cameras. Clara shook her head, turning off the sound. She hoped Ethan would see the truth before it was too late. But she also knew some lessons had to be learned the hard way. One rainy night, Ethan stayed late at the office. He stared at the city lights, the glass reflecting his tired face. He thought of the night Clara had stood before him, shaking with fear but brave enough to tell the truth. He wondered where she was. Did she regret speaking up? Did she know how badly he wished things could go back? The phone rang, snapping him out of his thoughts. Amelia's voice came through, cold and impatient. "Are you coming home tonight? Or should I expect you in the morning?" Ethan sighed. "I'll be home soon." She hung up without saying goodbye. At home, Ethan found Amelia sitting in the living room, glass of wine in hand, eyes on the fire. She didn't look up when he walked in. He sat across from her. "Is this really what you wanted? Is this what marriage means to you?" Amelia smirked, swirling her wine. "Marriage is what you make it. Maybe you're just not making enough of it." She stood up, walked past him, and disappeared upstairs. Ethan sat alone, the sound of the fire mocking him. He realized, too late, that the cracks in his perfect world had become canyons. Pride kept him silent. Shame kept him trapped. The warning he'd ignored haunted him. In another part of the city, Clara wrapped her mother in a blanket, listening to her ragged breathing. She'd lost her job, but not her sense of right and wrong. She wondered if Ethan would ever remember the maid who tried to save him from a mistake. She prayed for him, just once, hoping he'd find the truth, even if it hurt. In the shadows, Amelia met Daniel again. They laughed softly, planning the next move. Amelia handed Daniel a file, Ethan's business secrets. Daniel smiled, slipping his arm around her. "You're doing well. He suspects nothing." Amelia's voice was low, but sure. "He'll never see it coming." The stage was set. Betrayal was in motion. Ethan, for all his power and pride, was walking deeper into the trap, too blinded by pride and pain to see the truth. And outside the mansion, the storm was just beginning. 5 years passed, but happiness never came to Ethan's mansion. On the outside, the house still looked perfect. Grand windows, polished marble, expensive cars parked out front. Inside, the rooms were silent, cold, and lonely. The laughter and love Ethan once dreamed about never arrived. The marriage had collapsed in slow motion. At first, Ethan tried to fix things. Gifts, trips, apologies. Nothing worked. Amelia grew distant and cruel. She came and went as she pleased, treating the house like a hotel and Ethan like an unwanted guest. Most nights, she didn't come home at all. Ethan buried himself in work, but even there, things were falling apart. Amelia's betrayals, once just suspicion, became impossible to ignore. Business secrets leaked to competitors. Deals fell through. His board lost faith. The media, once obsessed with his success, now smelled blood. Amelia stopped pretending. She no longer wore her wedding ring. One morning after another, silent breakfast, she looked up and said, "I want a divorce. I'm taking what's mine and then some." Ethan looked at her, exhausted. "You want the money? Fine. Take it. I don't care anymore." Amelia gave a mocking smile. "Don't worry. I'll take more than that." Within days, Amelia's lawyers hit Ethan with lawsuits. She accused him of abuse, fraud, anything she could. She joined forces with Daniel Grant, who had always been waiting for this moment. Ethan's enemies circled like sharks. His company stocks crashed. Investors pulled out. Longtime friends vanished. Within months, Ethan's empire crumbled. The house was sold to pay debts. Cars, art, everything went. Ethan watched it all disappear. He had nothing left but his name, and even that was a joke. In the newspapers, the worst part wasn't the money. It was the betrayal. The people he trusted most, his wife and his oldest rival, had torn his life apart while he looked the other way. Pride had blinded him. On a cold night, alone in a cheap apartment, Ethan stared at his reflection in a cracked mirror. His hair was gray at the edges now, his eyes tired and hollow. He remembered Clara, the poor maid who tried to warn him, the only person who ever risked telling him the truth. Regret burned inside him, deeper than any loss. Ethan drifted through the city, lost in shame. One day, hungry and desperate, he walked past a small community center. Children played outside. Volunteers handed out food. He paused, drawn by the sound of laughter, real, warm, nothing like the fake joy he'd seen at his own parties. Inside, he saw a woman leading a group of kids in a simple art lesson. She was older now, thinner, her clothes plain. But Ethan recognized Clara immediately. She smiled at the children, her eyes kind and gentle. He almost turned away, but guilt and hope pulled him inside. Clara looked up and froze, her eyes wide with shock. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan felt small, suddenly aware of how much he'd changed, and how much he'd lost. "Clara," he said quietly, voice rough. She looked at him, searching his face. "Ethan? Is it really you?" He nodded, unable to meet her eyes. I didn't know where else to go." Clara put down her chalk and motioned for one of the volunteers to take over the class. She led Ethan to a small office at the back. He sat, head in his hands. "I'm sorry," he whispered, "for everything." Clara sat across from him. She waited, letting the silence settle. "I should have listened to you," Ethan said. "You tried to help me, and I ruined your life. Now, look at me." Clara studied him for a moment. "I didn't want your money, Ethan. I just wanted to do the right thing." "I know," he said, his voice trembling. "I lost everything, my company, my home, my reputation. Amelia, she destroyed me. I let her. I was too proud." Clara nodded slowly. "Pride can destroy a person, but you're still here. That counts for something." Ethan wiped his eyes, ashamed to be crying in front of her. "I have nothing left. I can't even get a job. No one wants to be associated with me. I deserve it, I guess." Clara shook her head. "No one deserves to be alone forever, Ethan. You made mistakes, but you can start over. Everyone can." He looked up, a small spark of hope flickering. Do you think there's any way I can make things right? Not for me. For you." Clara smiled, tired but sincere. "Just be honest from now on. Help others when you can. That's all anyone can do." He nodded, swallowing his pride. "If there's anything I can do here, I'd like to try. I don't care what it is." Clara thought for a moment. "We can always use more hands. It's not glamorous, but it's real." Ethan agreed. For the first time in years, he felt a strange peace, like maybe there was still a place for him in the world, even if it wasn't the one he built. Outside, the laughter of children echoed through the hall. Ethan realized he hadn't heard that sound in years, not real laughter, not like this. He closed his eyes and let it sink in, grateful for a second chance, even if it was just a small one. In the days that followed, Ethan worked hard at the center. He swept floors, handed out food, and listened to people's stories. Some recognized him, some didn't care who he was. He learned the value of humility, of honest work, of kindness. Clara didn't judge him. She treated him like everyone else. Slowly, the weight of shame began to lift, but Ethan knew the past couldn't be erased. He couldn't undo the pain he'd caused or the years he'd lost. All he could do was try to be better, starting now. Daniel and Amelia, meanwhile, celebrated their victory. Sure, Ethan would never recover, but storms don't last forever, and the truth has a way of finding its way out. And in that little community center, surrounded by people who had nothing but hope. Ethan Cole started to become human again. Ethan's life was simple now. He woke early, helped serve breakfast to families who had nothing, and spent his afternoons tutoring kids who struggled in school. Some days he fixed broken chairs or repainted the walls. The work was hard, but it brought a quiet satisfaction he had never known in his years of wealth. Clara watched Ethan adjust to this new life with quiet pride. He never complained or asked for special treatment. He accepted small jobs, listened to advice, and slowly won the trust of the center's staff and visitors. Over time, some of the local families even learned his name and smiled when he walked in. One afternoon, Clara found Ethan fixing a leaky faucet in the kitchen. "Need a hand?" she asked. He glanced up, his hands covered in grease. "If you've got a wrench, I could use all the help I can get." They worked side by side. The silence between them was comfortable now, free of old guilt. When they finished, Ethan leaned back, wiping his forehead. "I never thought I'd be happier fixing a sink than closing $1 million deal," he said. Clara smiled. "Sometimes it takes losing everything to figure out what matters." Ethan nodded, thinking of all he'd lost and what he'd finally found. A few weeks later, the city was buzzing with scandal. News broke that Daniel Grant's company was under investigation. Anonymous documents had been sent to the authorities, emails, signed contracts, records showing how Daniel and Amelia had stolen and laundered millions through fake charities. The evidence was solid, damning, and detailed. People whispered, who could have exposed them so perfectly? Ethan watched the news in the break room, stunned. He turned to Clara. "Did you know about this?" Clara's face was unreadable. "I heard rumors, like everyone else." He studied her, realizing that even after all this time, Clara had her own quiet strength. The investigation moved fast. Daniel was arrested on live television. Amelia tried to run, but the law caught up with her. Both were charged with fraud, theft, and conspiracy. For days, the city couldn't talk about anything else. Journalists tried to get Ethan's comments, but he stayed silent. He no longer cared about headlines or revenge. He only cared about the people in front of him. Kids who needed lunch, mothers who needed hope, and friends who had stood by him when he had nothing. One evening, after the center had closed, Ethan and Clara sat outside on the steps, watching the sunset. "Do you regret anything?" Ethan asked quietly. Clara thought for a moment. "I regret that you had to fall so far to see the truth, but I'm glad you found your way back." He nodded. "Thank you for helping me, even when I didn't deserve it." She looked at him, eyes warm. "We all deserve a second chance. Just don't waste it." They sat together in silence, the evening breeze soft and gentle. Ethan never got his old life back. He didn't want it. Instead, he built something new. He used what money he had left to fund community projects, scholarships, and free clinics. He told his story at schools and shelters about pride, mistakes, and the courage to do what's right. Clara continued to run the community center, caring for those the world ignored. She and Ethan remained close friends, partners in a quiet mission to make their corner of the world kinder. People sometimes asked why Ethan Cole, the fallen billionaire, spent his days in an old building, handing out soup and pencils. He always gave the same answer. "I learned the hard way that honesty matters more than money, and that sometimes the best advice comes from the most unexpected places." The story ended not with riches restored or headlines redeemed, but with two people who chose compassion over revenge, honesty over pride, and hope over bitterness. Their example spread. Kids they helped grew up and helped others. People talked less about Ethan Cole the billionaire and more about Ethan Cole the friend, the man who listened, who showed up, and who never forgot what it meant to be forgiven. And as for the moral, Clara summed it up best for the children she taught. Never ignore the truth just because it's uncomfortable. And never think you're too important to listen to someone with nothing. Pride can destroy, but kindness will always build. that, in the end, was the legacy they left behind.